Here's what comes up when you search Lebanon online. Is it safe? Are you sure you should go? That's the kind of things we were hearing before leaving. Well, here's what our Lebanon experience looked like. So what's going on? Imagine this. All the spending you're doing right now, your weekly Trader Joe's visit, don't forget the cookie butter, going to the movies, maybe you bought a Coachella ticket, you had to go to the doctor, you get the idea. Now imagine that whatever you're earning was cut by 90%. 90%. Oh, you were earning $80,000 a year? That's $8,000 now. Everything you've been buying though, it costs the same. What do you do? Right? It's all thanks to government corruption and mismanagement, among a bunch of other things. And that's just skimming the issue. It's true, there's a bunch of issues to work through. Here's the thing though, its problems don't define its people. Let me introduce you to Nada and Joelle, two of the most amazing people I've ever met. They run TourLeb, a social enterprise whose mission is to have you fall in love with Lebanon. And it kind of works. On the first day, Joelle gave us a crash course on Beiruit and on Lebanon. We were there a couple of months after the first anniversary of the explosion. And you do still see and feel the effects. There's wreckage and scarred buildings everywhere. And you hear the pain and anger from people. But Lebanese people look out for each other, and it's impressive to see how much they've rebuilt. Our awesome hostel in Beiruit, the Grand Meshmouch, is a great example of this. Most of their rooms were completely destroyed after the blast, and a year later, they're able to welcome guests. One of our first stops was Martyr Square. This square alone makes the amount of conflict this area has seen pretty apparent. The statue in the middle of the square is an homage to the people that was slaughtered back in 1915 by the Ottoman Empire. And if you look closely, you notice these bullet hole looking perforations. When Rachel and I were looking at it, we thought they were part of the original sculpture. Come to find out though, it's remnants from the Civil War, and they were left there as a statement of how much the area has endured. Right behind the statue, like a block away, is this beautiful mosque. And behind that mosque is a Christian church. This is when we started to learn how much history Lebanon sits on. Apparently Phoenicians, what are Phoenicians? An ancient civilization from 1550 BC to 300 BC that lived and thrived off of the Mediterranean Sea. Well, they were the first to settle here thousands of years ago. And you probably can't dig anywhere in Lebanon without hitting some kind of ancient history. Like that Christian church that I just mentioned. It was built on top of some Roman ruins. For some perspective, LA's oldest building is from like 1818. One of my favorite memories is ending the night at Chateau Cana. Chateau. A winery tucked away on a steep hill. It kind of felt like a scene out of a movie where poets, artists, musicians, philosophers are having some kind of intellectual talk over fancy drinks. That was us! Drinking wine, snacking, and having these awesome conversations. It was awesome. Part of what TourLeb does is help provide employment for women in a place where it's otherwise still hard. We got picked up early the next day by Nadia. She's so cool and so go with the flow. This one morning we were sitting down drinking coffee and Rachel was like, "Is it too early for shisha?" Next thing you know, the waiter comes over with 2 shishas, one for Rachel and one for Nadia. Nadia was taking us to Jeita Grotto that morning. Jeita Grotto is this massive system of 2 limestone caves, and by massive, I mean like 5 miles. A lot of people consider it the 8th wonder of the world, and with good reason. You get there and it's kind of like an amusement park.
Jacob, are you so excited to see these grottos that we are not even allowed to show people?
I'm excited to not show people.
I'm excited to not show you.
You take a train up to the entrance of the caves. Along the way, there's sculptures, gardens, places to stop and eat. Oh yeah, the caves. Let's see, how do I describe them? They look as if Dracula hired a bunch of abstract artist trolls and they went through shaping and smoothing the rock. And they did a good job. Even though a lot of people do it, they sneak in cell phones and cameras, they ask that you don't record, so I didn't record. Respect the rules, people. And even if you do record in there, the lighting sucks. It's a cave. Here's a picture I pulled up from Wikipedia. And you can find videos online, but none of them do it justice. We're thinking of having organized trips to Lebanon, so if you want to see them in person, stay tuned. For lunch that day, we went to Amioun in the north of Lebanon. I nodded like, north is that way. North. It is that way. We were invited to this artisans market and lunch by Anthony from No Garlic, No Onions. This dude's great. Check out his channel up here somewhere. Anthony's been working hard to get Lebanese people to fall in love with their own country, food, and variety of cultures. We had a lot of food options. You'll notice this is a constant out here. But my favorite from this event was this flatbread thing that was kind of folded into the shape of a taco. I wish I remembered the name. If you know what this thing is, please comment. Vegetarians, avert your eyes. Check out this lamb. It was so damn savory and a little scary looking, but it was delicious. After lunch, we went on a little tour of a neighborhood in Amioun where we were going to check out a church with frescoes from the 10th and 11th century. Of course, from the 10th and 11th centuries. Getting into the church was an adventure. It felt like a video game. We had to find the keys. The keys were with an old lady, but the old lady was missing. So we went around asking the neighbors, and they were great. Immediately, they were calling, asking where she was. Just as we were about to give up, she and her husband drove up in their car. The neighbor grabbed the key, and this is what was inside the church. It's crazy to think that these 1,000 plus year old paintings are still here in this 1,000 plus year old church that still has mass, and it's all protected by an old lady with the key. This is a typical Lebanese breakfast. You start off with coffee, which is kind of like espresso. They brew it with cardamom. It's not my favorite, but it's not bad. And then this is the spread that you get. If it seems like a lot of food, it's because it is. On this day, we went on one of the group tours that TourLeb does for locals. Their mission to have people fall in love with Lebanon isn't just for outsiders. We started our tour at Abu Arab.
Do you see that? Do you see that?
They make this purse-shaped bread called a kake. And it's purse-shaped because before they had a location, they used to carry them around on bikes and motorbikes. And the purse made it easier to carry. There's all sorts of fillings you can get. I can't name all of them, but we got chocolate and cheese. My stomach just grumbled thinking about that. 3 attempts and 1 unreliable Google Maps route later, we arrived at Salim Azam's design house in the Chouf region of Mount Lebanon. We didn't get to meet him, but we had the pleasure of meeting some of the ladies that him and his sister employ. Salim's designs are incredible, and not just in aesthetic, but in that they preserve the craft of embroidery, they tell stories, and they're preserving heritage. Oh, and they're providing jobs for all these talented women. A short drive away, there's buildings and palaces that are between 100 and 400 years old. We checked out a half-restored palace that has a very interesting story that you should know, but I don't remember it. Check out this cute puppy though. The owners were very inviting and they took us around the whole house. We met a grandma at the top that was so happy to have us there, and she let me take her picture. Look at this. It was a beautiful moment. And the cute dog is in it. I also captured this other beautiful moment between our new friend Bruno and Rachel a few blocks down. That's how I knew we were gonna get along. I was taking a picture of Rachel in this corridor and she looked like a Disney princess. So Bruno just went up to her and started dancing. And then we took a snack break, of course. This man was great. He's clearly passionate about feeding people, and he was very proud to show us his process. For dessert, we walked across the street to the bakery. Well, not the bakery, but the owner's house next to the bakery. In the setting that we were in, it made it feel like we were family. I almost understood Arabic, but not really. I'm probably gonna butcher the pronunciation, but our final stop of the day was, hold on, Muktara Palace. It's a beautiful and gigantic property built on the ruins of an ancient Frankish castle. It's pretty damn bougie. Like right at the entrance, there's this encased classic Mercedes. The palace is owned by the Jumblat family who govern the area. And from my understanding, they're pretty well liked by the people, unlike a bunch of other politicians. Here's a few pictures I took around the place. We closed out the day with beer and seafood by the beach. We were at the seafood restaurant that was decorated in all white with those white plastic chairs. And if I've learned anything from Bourdain, it's to follow those white plastic chairs because it leads to humble and delicious food. It's pretty hard to grasp the length, but this city is one of the oldest continually inhabited cities in the world, like 8800 BCE old. That's pretty damn old. You can literally see civilization on civilization in these ruins. I'm gonna screw this up even though I'm reading it off of something, but let's see. Egyptian, Phoenician, Assyrian, Persian, Hellenistic, Roman, Fatimid, Genoese, Mamluk, and Ottoman. Not bad. That's over 6,000 years of history, so 6,000 years of civilizations rising and falling. It's a UNESCO site now, so no more layering. This city has gone by all sorts of names, but one of the oldest is Jabal, which roughly translates to Well of God. And one of the reasons it's been so continuously inhabited is this fresh water well and where it's positioned. Fresh water, plus access to the sea for trade, plus higher ground for protection, means a very convenient city. I mean, I get why these civilizations moved here. And this was our amazing guest house, Fairs and Lucia, right in the middle of the downtown. It's a ridiculously cozy place, and everyone from the staff to the owners is so warm and welcoming. One of the commodities that was traded out of Byblos and out of Lebanon was salt. There's a long history of salt extraction with huge commercial success in Lebanon, but between foreign competition and internal conflict, there aren't that many places that do it anymore. I'd never seen salt extraction, so it was interesting to see a piece of the process and the result. Remember that salt from the artisans market? It came from here. Craft beer, gin, and vodka aren't necessarily synonymous with Lebanon, at least not stateside, so I was excited to hear that that's how we were ending the day. Generous is a theme in Lebanon. I mean, look at these tasters. I had one tasting of everything, and I was buzzing. Tripoli. It's like the perfect assault on the senses. Should you go? Was it safe? What's there? Yes, yes, and everything's there. Let's start with this bread though. I can't remember what it's called, but it drags you in like those old cartoons, you know, by the nose. There's a few other options, but we ate it with this red spice, and it was so damn good. After we got our fill of bread, we're walking down the street. I look up, and there's these pigeons circling a building. And then below the pigeons, there's this dude, and he's spinning something. And I was like, there's a connection here. Joelle noticed that I was curious, and she was like, do you want to film it? I don't know what it was, but yup, We raced up what seemed like 10 flights of stairs or something. I was tired. And this is what we found up there. It's a hobby out there, and from the roof, you could actually see other people that were doing the same thing. One of the most memorable moments from that experience was actually when we were walking down the building. There was this old lady who had seen us, I guess, on the way up, but on the way down, she invited us for coffee. She knew nothing about us, why we were there, yet there she was, inviting us into her home. We were walking through this maze, and then Joelle's like, left. We ended up at this unassuming soap factory.
So everything here is handmade. Even if you want to clean that soap, if you want to cut it, everything is handmade.
This soap factory has been running for over 100 years, and they still make soap the old school natural way. There's so much going on in the streets of Tripoli that it's easy to miss treasures like this, or like this bathhouse. Lebanon has a long tradition with bathhouses or hammams, and these are just places where you go relax, take a bath, hang out. There aren't many that are still in service, but we got to experience abandoned ones, converted ones. There was one that was an art gallery, and some that are still active, like this one. We were supposed to go on a boat tour of the nearby islands right after the hammam, but the boat took off without us because someone else was there. We had a reservation, but they were like, they're here, you're not. Joelle and Nada, unfazed. They figured out the situation crazy fast, and it was well worth it. After the boat tour, we walked over to Mina, over to yet another hidden gem, this miniature boat craftsman, Atelier Bakri. He makes all the models by hand, which can take months, and they're ridiculously intricate. Around the corner from the shop is a lively street full of restaurants and bars. We sat and ordered from the Sailor Woman, a seafood joint, but we also ordered from the pizza joint next door, El Plate. Just like when we sat and had cookies in that baker's home, this very much felt like a family setting. We had the pizza coming in from next door, and the seafood was coming in from the owner's home kitchen upstairs. Do you all like shisha or hookah? I wasn't always about it, but it hits different over there. So what was I supposed to do? Not embrace the lifestyle? This right here, these are the moments I travel for. To sit down over dinner, drinks, shisha, and just talk, connect, share stories, make friends. A lot of my imagination would hop to deserts and oases for anything in the Middle East. And you find like none of that in Lebanon. No deserts, no camels. Well, except for one camel that we saw, but he's not from there and he's lonely. Poor guy. Instead of deserts outside of the city, this is what you find there. Kadisha, or the Holy Valley, sits in the north part of Lebanon. The valley is this massive gorge that's lined with forest, agriculture, towns, and all sorts of caves. Throughout history, these caves have been used for shelter, burial grounds, and for protection. The protection that these valleys provided led early Christian communities to settle here when they were escaping persecution. That's why you find that the valley is lined with cave dwellings and monasteries built right into and from the rocky landscape. While visiting Kadisha Valley, we stayed at yet another beautiful guest house. Guest houses have been common practice in Lebanon for a while, but they're going through a renaissance right now. Since people couldn't leave the country, they started exploring domestically, and they stayed in places like Karaz. Karaz is a 6-room, and by room I mean like full-on loft, luxury guest house. Saida, who basically built the place, did an amazing job curating Karaz. Every room has a unique story and everything comes together in this hallway dining room. It looks awesome. Thank you for hosting us, Said. Tucked away in the valley is one of the last remaining pieces of a cedar forest. We got to this forest, the Cedars of God, close to closing time, which made it extra special. We almost didn't get in, but Nada talked her way into it, and I'm so glad she did. If you haven't seen the Lebanese flag, there's a cedar right in the middle of it, so it's a pretty significant tree. The Cedars of God is one of the last places that you could find the trees, and this area used to be covered with them. We didn't get to explore for too long because we did overstay our welcome, so we had this dude following us all the way through until we left. You could tell he was pretty proud though, because he basically gave us a tour. As we were walking back to the gate, we took the long way, and he stopped and explained everything to us, including these sculptures by Rudy Ramey that are built right into the trees around the forest. This was our meal for the night. Another awesome host. He gave us the works, like he covered the table in food. Food in Lebanon though, bomb. Balbek is a huge plain with lots of agriculture and the Syrian border casually in the horizon. We were in Balbek to check out the Temple of Bacchus and the Temple of Jupiter. Two of the largest and most preserved Roman temples still around actually. I was blown away by the fact that they're still here. I knew that Romans got around, but to the point that they were building temples this size, that far away from the source, that was mind-blowing. Look at the size of these stones. That's some dedication. And they're still standing. This older couple runs a reservation-only restaurant out of their home. And look at this Roman-sized spread. For 3 people. Their generosity was definitely appreciated. With that amount of food, we needed a nightcap to help digestion. So we went over to Chateau Rayak. This dude's got an awesome story. Wine had been made in his family for generations, but by the time that he was born, they weren't producing it anymore.
His store is self-service.
When he was a teenager, he wanted to learn how to drive. So he conned his grandpa into letting him drive with the excuse of wanting to make wine. Smart. So off they went on their adventure, and what started off as an excuse ended up turning into a passion as he got older. Now he makes artisanal wine and arak his way. And I'm no sommelier, but the wine and the arak, they were delicious.
Merci.
And that wasn't just the heavy pour speaking, they were good. We may be different in a lot of ways. Like, I'll never know what it's like to have to arm up to protect your business and your family. But this night, our passions, our personal pleasures, a random evil laugh competition, it brought us all close together, if only for that boozy night. We started the next day with a classic and much needed hangover food called a kanafe. It's this cheese in between what Wikipedia calls a spun pastry, and it's soaked in the sugar syrup, and it's all wrapped up in this warm, fluffy bread. Bomb! Saida, which is located to the south, is the most conservative part of Lebanon. Here, you'll notice that people wear more traditional dress, there's no alcohol served, and on Fridays, the city basically shuts down at 12 for family and prayer time. We checked out the photo-famous Citadel by the Sea. It's a fortress built by crusaders in the 13th century. It's been destroyed and rebuilt so many times over the last few centuries, but look at it go, it's still standing. We toured around more awesome historical sites, like this museum that was once a house. I mean, sure, it's a museum now, but this was someone's house. My favorite part was these kids, though. From the moment that they saw us, they were like Nada's assistant guides. Their curiosity and energy was contagious. About 30 minutes away is Saida's sister city, Tyre. Fun fact, the color purple was discovered here. Apparently it was pulled from some sea snails. They secreted the color. Gross, but cool. Outside of learning about purple, we checked out some Roman ruins in the sea, and we grabbed drinks with Nada's friend Zuzu, and he looks and goes by Poseidon. Look at the guy. I didn't film any of it, but we sat on the top floor, windows open, listening to the waves crash at the bottom, and we just drank beer and chatted. So chill. We closed the night at Lebanon's only casino. Remember Bruno? He's a very talented singer. He had this opening night show at the casino, and he invited us. Sometime in the middle of the open bar fiasco, I switched from whiskey to a rock. Pro retrospect tip, do not mix whiskey and a rock. Guess who went paragliding in one of the most famous paragliding spots in the world, all hungover? I was hurting. People make treks out here just to paraglide.
You can go up the stairs.
1, because of the views. 2, because it's one of few places in the world where you can jump from a mountain and end up at the beach. It was freaking epic.
Wow.
Our last dinner in Lebanon was at this tiny Armenian joint, like 3 tables tiny. It was so intimate and I loved the ordering experience. This guy comes up to you and he basically goes down the list of what's available and you're like, yup, nope, yup, and that's your order. This is the new way, mind you. Before he took over, his dad would just come up to you and tell you what you were eating. Hey, whatever works. The food, of course, bomb. How do you like my food reviews, by the way? They're on a scale of bomb to not. You think the LA Times will hire me? We ended Lebanon as one should, with a party. And they know how to do it up over there. In Beiruit especially. The party streets are packed. It very much feels like a celebration. Times are tough, yes. But look, we're still here, we're alive, we're healthy, we're in good company. Let's celebrate that. Let everything happen to you. Beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. You see this, you feel it in Lebanon. Despite the issues that they might be going through, Lebanon moves forward. I'm not saying the problems aren't there, they're there. But what you see is people fighting for the humanity. They're fighting to survive.
تركتيني قلبي بردان وخليتيني للنسيان وخليتيني لمها جروح وجروح عندها إيمان.
Huge shout out to Joelle and Nada from TourLeb. This was an unbelievable experience. Thank you for sharing your country with us.
رحتي وتركتيني الوعد غبت كتير وغبت كتير ومشتاق لاقيها